Alright, so what is React and why we need to know about it? Well, based on the Stack Overflow latest survey, React.js is one of the most popular web frameworks, just below jQuery and above the other great frameworks like Angular. And according to Stack Overflow, jQuery is slowly losing its place to React.js over time. So what exactly is React anyways? Well, the web developers in Facebook, the creators of React.js, define it as a JavaScript library for building user interfaces. Basically, React is a front-end framework. And the best usage of React is to build beautiful user interfaces such as the ones on Facebook or Airbnb. One of the greatest things about React is to create repetitive elements like these profiles in Facebook website. As you can easily see, although these units are similar, but they have different pieces of information, such as the name or the profile pictures. So if you have too many of these units, you can basically make a particular component and modify it with different pieces of information, which can be received from an API or databases. Well, you finish up breaking down a very complicated website into a so-called component tree in React.js. For example, here in Facebook website, we have components such as navbar, feed section, or suggested users. These components can be used again and again and be customized so you don't need to write more codes to make more attractive user interfaces. And it also hugely makes the organization of your website simpler and easier. Previously, for building such a complex website like Facebook, we had separate different types of files including HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. However, what we do now in React is to basically combine these small amounts of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript into an individual component in a way that each component can have its own styling and functionality. And you can definitely make many of these components and reuse them inside different parts of your project. Also, another great thing you see in Facebook website is to load the feed screen without the rest of the page to be changed. You can see that even the page is not refreshing. This ability of React enables your website to be very fast and effective. Now, of course, React is not the only front-end framework. So, why we should learn React anyways? Well, if we compare React in Google Trends with the other most popular front-end frameworks like Angular and Vue, we can clearly see that React is being searched more than the others in the last couple of years. React is being used at many famous websites such as Airbnb, Uber, Facebook, and Netflix. And it's probably one of the most wanted and demanded skills out there. Actually, if you look at this recent blog about the most in-demand front-end frameworks in 2020, you see that the top front-end development for getting a job as a front-end developer is React above Vue. I hope you're excited as I am to learn this front-end framework technology. So without any further delay, let's get started and learn about React.js. Okay, in this section, we're going to install Node. We need Node later to install React and its dependencies using npm. Well, first we search Node.js and we click on nodejs.org, which is the official website of Node.js. Then we go to the download page, and here you can find all the possible installers, including Windows, macOS, or Linux. Just choose the installer based on your machine. My computer is using Windows 10, and I'm going to install the Windows installer. The Mac or Linux installation would be easy as well, but if you have any problem installing Node, please let me know and I will guide you through it. So we click to download the installer, and after the download is finished, we click to run it. Usually it takes about a few seconds until the installer is initialized. And then we're going to hit Next and accept the license agreement. Click Next again. We choose the folder we wish the node to be installed. I prefer to leave the default one. And we click Next. Click Next again. Next. And finally we press on Install button. The installation process usually takes a few minutes to be finished. Finally, we see that the installation has been successfully completed. Okay, in this section, we're going to install a text editor. The text editor I highly recommend is Visual Studio Code, or VScode for short. VScode is currently very popular among web developers. It has a lot of useful and great extensions that make the coding easier and faster. However, if you prefer other text editors like Atom or Sublime Text, it's totally fine and up to you. But I'm going to use VS Code and I highly recommend it to everyone. Okay, let's install VS Code. Well, first we search VS Code and we click on code.visualstudio.com, which is the official website of VS Code. Then we choose the installer based on our own computer, which can be Windows, macOS, or Linux. In order to have the best performance, I highly recommend to choose the stable version, which is much faster and reliable. My computer is using Windows 10, and I'm going to install the Windows installer. The Mac or Linux installation process is very easy as well, but as I mentioned before, if you have any problem in installation process, please let me know and I will guide you through it. So we click to download the installer. And after the download is finished, we click to install the VS Code software. And we accept the license agreement. Click Next again. Make sure to select Add to Path and then click on Next. We finally press on Install button and wait for the program to be installed. The installation process usually takes a few seconds to be finished. Okay, we can now launch the VS Code and use it for our coding. Before using VS Code, I would like to introduce you some extensions that make the coding much easier and faster, and I'm using them always in my project coding. In order to add the extensions, you need to firstly open the extensions from View menu. The first extensions we are going to install is Prettier. Prettier helps us automatically format our code. So we click on Install button to install the Prettier extension. Then we need to go in VS Code setting, which is in File menu, Preference. And then we search for Format and Save and select the Format and Save. This setting allows us to format our code as soon as we save them. Okay, we go back to the extensions menu again and we install the next extension. The next useful extension is Auto Rename Tag. Auto Rename Tag extension changes the closing tag as soon as we change the opening tag. Okay, similar to what we have done on previous installation, click here to install the extension. The next one is Bracket Pair Colorizer. The Bracket Pair Colorizer makes our code firstly more beautiful and also much easier to read. It colorizes the matching brackets, which would be useful when we have many brackets, especially in JavaScript coding files. Next useful extension is ES7 React Redux GraphQL React Native Snippets. which makes our coding very fast and exponentially increase our coding speed. During the course, I will let you know how to use it, but just make sure to install it now. Okay, that was all the extensions we need for now. Alright, in this section, we're going to set up our local environment for React development. So, whether you're using Atom or VScode or any text editor you wish to use, we're going to get you started making React apps on your computer. Okay, let's get started. There's only few steps that are required to start creating React app. First step is to simply create a React app using npx. And to do this, we're going to follow the instructions from the React website. First, we need to search React.js and go to the React.js.org, which is the official website of React. Here we click on Docs, and then we click on Create a new React app. If we scroll down a little bit, we find the codes we need to easily create our React app. This is one of the easiest ways of creating a brand new React app. So we have to run these codes inside the terminal. This is the npx command, which is, as they said, a package runner tool that comes with npm, and it will install Create React App on your computer so that you can create new React apps from scratch. And then the very last part is whatever name you want to call your app. So we need to copy this as it is to create a project called My App, and then simply paste it in the terminal inside VS Code. First, we open the VS Code and close the Welcome tab. And in order to open the terminal inside VS Code, we need to just press Ctrl backtick in Windows or Command backtick in macOS. Before running the code, we create the folder inside the desktop or wherever you wish to have your app folder. So open the file, open folder, choose the desktop, and create a folder. Rename the folder React App. Okay, now we copy the code and paste it inside the terminal. And then hit Enter to run the code. It's going to install the required packages, including React, React DOM, and React scripts. React script is basically the scripts that's required to actually be able to run React apps locally on your computer. Now, the first time that you run this command, it's going to take a while. On my computer, which is using Windows 10, it took something like 7 minutes to be finished. It might take more or less for you depending on your machine. But once it's completed, you will get something like this. Success, created my app at this location. And if you go inside the directory, My App, using cd my app, you can run npm start to start the server. This is going to use that module, React scripts, to run the script and open up the app. Please note that you might get some warnings from firewall. Just be sure to click Allow Access if you see any warning. And once it's loaded up, you'll see localhost being opened up in the browser. This is all we have for our app at this moment. And in order for it to show something else, we're going to have to edit our source app.js file. Okay, we go back to VS Code. We see that we have two folders with lots of files including logos, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript files. By the way, we are going to learn React from scratch. I'm going to delete all these files inside the two folders, and we are going to create each file from scratch and learn the codes line by line. So in the next section, we are going to get familiar with basics of React apps and create the fundamental files including HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Okay, see you in the next section. Alright, in this section we are going to create the fundamental files including HTML, CSS, and JavaScript files inside the two folders that we have just emptied in the last section. The public folder is the folder that the browser sees and renders. So the HTML, CSS, and the graphic files including logos and images are located inside this public folder. On the other hand, the source folder src is used for JavaScript files, and the components we are creating inside our React application such as header, footer, and the main application are located in this folder as well. Okay, first we start creating the HTML by right-click and click on New File, and we call the HTML file index.html. This is the file that browsers see and render. And through this file, browser looks for CSS and JavaScript files. So we need to link CSS and JavaScript files inside this file. Firstly, we simply write an exclamation mark and click enter to select the first auto suggestion to have the HTML boilerplate. Here we simply change the title of our application to React App. As we can see, we have head section and the body section. Inside the head section, we have to link to our external links and CSS files. And in the body section, we have to link to the JavaScript files. Okay, first let's create the main CSS file by right-click on public folder and select New File. We name the file styles.css to follow the naming convention. We just add margin and min height to the body. So we write body, and inside a set of curly braces, we write margin equals 0 to remove the default margin from the four sides of the body. In the most major browsers, the default margin is 8 pixels on all sides. Next, we set the minimum height of the body to be 100% by writing min height 100 VH. VH stands for viewport height. It lets you make things a certain percentage of height of your browser window itself, whether that viewport is a tablet screen, a phone screen, or a laptop screen. Using VH helps us have our footer always at the end of the page, even there is nothing in the main application. We're going to show you the benefits of using VH when we are creating our footer. Okay, it's time to add the CSS to the index.html. Well, just at the end of head section, we use the link tag to add the CSS link. Just write link and enter to accept the VScode auto suggestion. Here in the href section, we write the address of the CSS file, which is just the file name. Because the CSS file is located at the same directory as the HTML file. Okay, let's create the JavaScript file and link it inside the index.html. As I mentioned before, we put all the JavaScript files including the React components, which are also JavaScript files, inside the src folder. Well, we create a new file and call it index.js, which again just to follow the naming convention. We can link this index.js inside index.html by just adding a script tag at the end of the body section. Inside the src, we write double dot to go outside the public folder, and then a slash src, a slash, and finally the name of our JavaScript file, which is index.js. Inside the JavaScript file, we finally import the two React and React.DOM packages, which we have installed earlier using npx create React app. So we write down import React from React and import React.DOM from React.DOM. Just make sure to write React in capital and React.DOM as exactly the same as I wrote. This might work the other way, but the standard convention is like this. This would make your code more understandable to anyone else looking at it. Before continuing on the JavaScript file and writing the next line, we need to add a div inside the body of the index.html file with the ID of root. We call this a root DOM node because everything inside it will be managed by React DOM. It is actually a root of our React application, and we are going to manipulate this div using JavaScript. Basically, we don't need to touch the HTML file anymore, and we are going to write our HTML file from now inside the JavaScript file by manipulating this div with the ID of root. In the next section, I will show you how we can do this inside the JavaScript file that we just created. Alright, in the last section, we have created the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript files. And we have linked the CSS and JavaScript files inside the index.html. We have also added a div inside the body. And as I have mentioned in the last section, we are going to manipulate this div inside a JavaScript file. Okay, let's do this inside the JavaScript file. Before continuing on our code inside index.js, let's try npm start now to check what we see inside the browser. If you don't see your terminal, just use Ctrl backtick, and if you are inside the My App folder, then just write npm start. You can see that the page is completely empty, but the title is changed to React App as we have changed the title inside the title tag in the index.html file. In order to use React to actually create something on the screen, we are going to use the render function. So we are going to tap into this React DOM that we have imported here, which gives us access to React DOM module. And we are going to tap into its render function. This render function takes two inputs. The first input is what to show. For example, we want to see a h1 tag saying hello world. And after the comma, the next thing that we can add as an input to this render function is where to show this hello world, for example. So the location is going to be a particular HTML element that we are going to target inside our index.html, which is the div with the ID of root. So we have to tap into the DOM using that document keyword, and then we use the method getElementById, and then inside a set of parentheses, we get to specify an element ID, which is the root. So we put it in there as a string. And now if we check the browser again, you can see we have now written hello world in our website, even though we have not touched our HTML file at all. We have already written a line of React code right here. We've used the React DOM module's render method in order to display h1 inside that root div. But please note that we cannot put another HTML tag, for example an h2 tag, saying welcome to our website. In this case, we get an error in our browser saying that all the HTML tags must be wrapped in an enclosing tag. All we need to remove this error is just simply to embed these two HTML elements inside a single div element. So we add a div here and wrap it around these two HTML tags. And now we have only one HTML tag, which is this div. This is how we can simply write our HTML tags inside a JavaScript file. In the next section, we are going to learn about components and how we can have multiple components and import them inside our application. So we don't need to write all our codes inside this index.js. Alright, in the last section, we have written our first React code. We have tried to have more than one HTML tag using a single div and wrap all the HTML tags inside this div. Now we can see in the browser that without getting any error, we have injected the two HTML tags. In this section, we are going to get started using React components in our application. The reason we use components is to make our code clean and very easy to read. The first component as a convention is usually a component with the name of app. In this component, we put all the other components such as header, footer, and the main body of the application. So in the src folder, we create a file named app.js. As you may notice, the naming convention for the component's name is to use Pascal case, which means that every single word has the first letter capitalized. The first thing we do in app.js file is to import React from React. We don't need to import React down as we did in index.js. And then we write a function with the same name of the component's name. I mean app. And then a set of parentheses. Then open a curly braces, and inside the curly braces, we return our codes which are still inside the index.js file. So we cut the codes and paste them here after the return. And we save the file. As you can see, after saving the file, the code has been beautified as we have the prettier extension. A set of parentheses is added as well. So after writing our function, we need to export the function by writing export default app. The reason we use default is because of only having one thing to export. After saving the file, we come back to the index.js and import the app component. We simply write import app from ./app. We write the address with only one dot because the app.js file is located at the same directory as the index.js. Also, as you may notice here, we have not used .js after the app. Using .js is optional. You can either use it or completely remove it. And then we use the imported app here by just writing it as an HTML tag. The convention is to use the self-closing tag. However, if you use the other way, for example, using the closing tag instead is correct as well. But as I said, the naming convention is to use the self-closing tag. Now after saving the file using Ctrl+S, we can see in the browser that we are getting the same result as before. So we see that making a functional component is very easy. We just need to create a function and export it as a default, and then import it inside the index.js, and finally use it as a self-closing HTML tag. Alright, in the next section, we are going to make the header as a new component and use it inside the app.js component. Alright, in the last section, we created our first component called app.js. The app.js only have a function, and we exported the app as a default. And inside the return section, we have a div wrapping two HTML tags. And inside index.js, we have imported app from ./app, and we use this app tag here to show it inside the browser. In this section, we are going to create another component for header. Usually, as a convention, developers use a folder for components like header and footer. So we create a folder inside src folder. We click on new folder. We call the folder components. And inside these components, we're going to create the other components like header and footer. So we right click here and click on new file. We write header.js. Inside the header.js, we have to do something like we did in app.js, writing down a function and exporting it as a default. But I'm going to show you a trick, so how we can write down this very fast. As you remember at the beginning of the course, we have installed an extension called ES7 React Redux GraphQL React Native Snippets. This extension allows us to have a prefix for each method. For example, we have a prefix imp for import module name from modules. So the prefix we are going to use here is RFCE, which stands for React Functional Component Export. If you click on the first auto suggestion, we see we got import React from React, and we have a function that is returning a div, and we're exporting header as a default. So we didn't need to write all these things, and we just use a prefix to write down all of them. Okay, we just write down a simple heading, and inside the heading we write header, and we save the file. Inside app.js, we import this component just below importing the React. There's another trick for importing the components that I'm going to show you here. First, we delete these two tags, and inside the div, I just write header. As we write just the first few letters, here we see an auto suggestion from VScode suggesting us that we can import this header from components/header. So if we click on this auto suggestion, we're going to import the header easily, and we don't need to write down import header from this location. Okay, we just need to close this tag and save the file. We go back to the browser and we check that we have a header tag inside our browser. So we have successfully created our component, and we have successfully imported inside the app.js. Okay, let's start making our header completely. Here I want to introduce you to something called Material UI. Material UI is a component-based library designed for React. By using Material UI, you can easily import some components for your application, such as navbar, table, or something like that. Okay, let's go to the browser and we search here Material UI. If you can see the first website, materialui.com, which is the official website of Material UI, a popular React UI framework. We click on this website. As you can see, they define themselves as a React components for faster and easier web development. For using Material UI, we just need to install them in our application. As you go inside the tab called Installation, we can easily install Material UI core by using this code. And after installing the Material UI core, if we want to use the Material UI, for example, if we want to use a button in our application like this, we just need to import button from Material UI/core. Alright, we just copy npm install Material UI/core from here and paste it inside the terminal to install the Material UI core. Okay, let's go back to the VS Code, and we go outside the application using Ctrl+C 2 times. Make sure you are inside my app folder, and here we paste npm install Material UI/core. The installation process usually takes a few seconds. All right, the installation process has been completed. So we write down npm start to start our application again. Okay, we close the previous tab. The material UI components that we are going to use is paper. If you go back to the website materialui.com and we search for paper, and if you click on the first links suggesting paper, we see that by using only paper tag, we can have something like this. We can use these kind of papers for our navbar. If we use the properties elevation, we can have more shadow in our papers. For example, this paper has elevation 0. This one is 1 as a default that we don't need to use. And also the last one has elevation 3. And for using paper in our application, we need to import it. So if you open the full source, here we see we have to import paper from material UI/core/paper. We already installed material UI/core, so we just need to copy this and we paste it in our component header.js. Just below import React from React, we paste this code. Now we can use it inside our application. So instead of having this div that is wrapping our HTML tags, we can have paper here. And if we save the file and we go back to our browser, we see we have a paper here. We just need to add more shadow to this paper. So we go back to the VScode and inside the paper tag, we add elevation as a new property and add 3 as the value. We save the file and check the browser again. We see we have more shadow, but the problem is we have some margin at the top. This margin is because of this h1 tag. For example, if we inspect the elements and we go to the layout section, we can see we have 21.44 margin at the top and the bottom of the h1. So we need to add a style at this specific h1 tag. There are two ways to add a style to a specific tag. The first way is to add class name and put a name for the class name. For example, we call it site name. And if we go inside style.css, we can add this class site name and open a curly braces. And inside a set of curly braces, we write margin 0 semicolon. If you go back to the browser, we see we remove the margin from the top and the bottom. There is another way to add a style to our tag. First, we delete this one, and I'll show you in a second how we add this style. We go to the header.js, we delete this class name, and we write a style equal to set of curly braces, and here we can add our margin. But here we add it like this. So margin equals 0, and 0 should be inside a double quote. So we save and we go to the browser. We see again that we don't have any margins. The other things I want to do, if you zoom here, I would like to remove this curve from the header. So if we go inside the paper tag, we can add a square and save, and we have removed this curve easily. And I want to add some padding inside the paper as well. So We add a style here in paper. We just add some padding around 5 pixels. And as you can see, we have added some padding easily inside our header. Okay, we change this header to React app. First, we remove the zoom. The other things I want to do is to change the font of React app. So let's go and search for font Google. We have to click on the first link, that is fonts.google.com. So we click on this link. Here we write React app and we check here which font is suitable for our application. So I click here. And we choose the regular 400 and select this style. We click on import. So we copy this code and we paste it inside styles.css at the top. Okay. We go back to the font.google and if you scroll down, so we copy this and we paste it inside styles.css just below min height here. We save the file and we go back to our browser. We see that our font has been changed. The other things I want to do is to change this font to be cursive. So we go back to the VScode and inside header.js, we add a style. We write down font family cursive. We can see we have a cursive font here. I would rather to have a thinner font. So we go back to VScode and we add font weight 100. So we have a thinner font here. The other thing is, instead of using font family like we used inside styles.css font dash family, inside header.js we have to use it as a camel case. Font family without dash and the family should be capitalized. Next things we want to do is to add a logo before the site name. So we search React. We choose images and we click here in all types and we choose transparent. We choose the size to be small and I would like to choose this logo. So we copy this link and we paste it inside a img tag just before the h1 tag. So we add an img tag inside a src. We paste the link we have just copied. We save and we check our browser. As you can see, the size of the logo is very big. So we change the style of the image. We write style, add 2 curly braces, and we just add a width of 50 pixels. Now we have a smaller logo, but the problem is the logo and the site name are not inside the same row. So we add a style inside paper. We say display flex. We check the browser. As you can see now the logo and our header are at the same row. Alright, we have finished creating our header. In the next section, we are going to create our footer. So see you in the next section. All right, in the last section, we have created our header, including the logo and the site name. We have also changed the font of our site name, and we have added a paper using Material UI. In this section, we are going to create our footer and bring it down at the bottom of our page. Okay, let's go and create the footer. Here we right-click on Components folder and press on New File. We create the file and call it footer.js. Here, by using ES7 module, we use the prefix RFCE to create the functional component. So we click on the first auto-suggestion by VScode. Now we got import React from React and a function returning an empty div and export default footer. So we add a paragraph here saying copyright, and we save the file and we add this component to the app.js. So let's go to app.js, and by using auto-suggestion again, we import the footer. So we write footer and we click on the first auto-suggestion. So we imported footer from this location. We just need to close the tag. Save the file and we check the browser. Yeah, we got the copyright here. Let's complete the footer. So copyright, we add the copyright symbol by just adding an and sign, copy, and semicolon. We save the file, we go back to the browser. Now we see the copyright symbol. Let's add the year and the name. So 2021 Sahan Rabidel, which is my name. Now we have our copyright symbol, the year, and the name. The problem is the 2021 is a static year. And in the following years, for example, in 2022, if you launch this website, you need to update the year every year. So we change this static year to a dynamic one. Let's go back to the VScode. And here we need to add a date constructor. We need JavaScript to write date constructor function. But we haven't added any JavaScript inside our HTML before. It's very easy to add the JavaScript. You just need to use a set of curly braces. So we add a set of curly braces here, and inside it, we can add JavaScript. So we write new date, which is a date constructor, and we tap into its method called getFullYear. And we open a set of parentheses. Now we delete this 2021, save the file, and we check the browser. As you can see, we got 2021, but this 2021 is dynamic and it will be changed based on the local time. All right, let's bring this footer down at the bottom of the page. So we need to add a style to our paragraph here. We just write style, open two curly braces, and we write position, absolute, bottom, 0. We save the file and check the browser. Now we have our footer at the bottom of the page. Next thing we need to do to bring this footer at the center of the page. All right, let's first change the width of this paragraph to be 100% by writing width 100%, and then we use text align center to bring the footer to the center of the page. So we save the file, we check the browser. Now we see our footer is in the middle of the page. And this is completely mobile friendly. For example, if we change our browser to be smaller, we see that the footer is still in the middle of the page. All right, in the next section, we are going to create our main application. See you in the next section. All right, in the last sections, we have completed the header and the footer. In this section, we are going to start creating our main application. In order to have some fake users, we are going to use a website called dummyapi.io. So we search dummy APIs and we click on dummyapi.io. I have already created an account in this website. Creating an account is very easy. You just need to enter your name and email. After creating the account, we check the documentation. As you can see, we have a base data URL. We just copy this. We go back to the VS Code. In app.js, at the top, we create a constant. We say const base URL equal, we open a double quote and we paste the URL here. We go back to the browser. We also need a header. We need to set an app ID. In order to create an app ID, we just need to go to the account, and here in the left, we click on Generate App ID. We copy this, we go back to the VS Code, and we create another constant. Just below this, we write const app ID equal to the app ID inside the double quote. Next, we need useEffect to fetch the data from the API. Here inside the function, we write useEffect. We click on the first auto-suggestion. We delete this return an effect. We don't have any input as well, so we delete the input. In order to fetch the data from the API, we need to install a package called Axios using npm. So we use Ctrl+C to go outside the terminal and we write npm install Axios. We use npm start to go inside the application again. We go back to the VS Code. Now we need to import Axios. Just below the header, we write import Axios from Axios. We also need to import useEffect. So we delete the last letter, we write it down again, and we click on the second auto-suggestion. As you can see, we have imported useEffect from React. So here we write Axios.get. We open a set of parentheses. We open a set of backtick. We write the base URL variable using a $sign. So we write a $sign, open a set of curly braces. We write base URL /user to get the users from the API, and we limit it to be only 5. So we write a question mark, limit equals to 5. We also need to add the headers. We go outside the backtick, we add a comma, we open a set of curly braces and we write headers equals a set of curly braces app ID equal to the app ID variable, which is here. We save the file. After using the get, we have to use the then method. So we write here, then we open a set of parentheses and we create an arrow function here. We open a set of parentheses again, we write a fat arrow, and we get the data here. So first we request the data from this URL using this header, and then we get the data. Now we need to save this data inside a state variable. So we create a use state variable here at the top. We write use state. We click on the first auto suggestion and we change the state to context. The initial state would be an object which has a data which is an empty array. The use state is a hook that allows you to have state variables in functional components. Actually, the use state hook is a special function that takes the initial state as an argument and returns an array of 2 entries. The first element is the current state, and the second one is a function that is used for updating the state. The first element is usually in lowercase, so we change this to lowercase. Here in the then method, we use the setContext to save this data. So we open a set of parentheses and we write data. After then, we need to catch the error. So we use the catch method .catch. We open a set of parentheses and we console the error. The other state variable we need is the loading state. So we add another use state here at the bottom of this use state. So we write use state. We click on the first auto suggestion. We change the state to loading. Change the first element to be in lowercase, and the initial state would be false. So we write false. We also forgot to import use state. So we delete the last letter, we add it again, and we click on the second auto suggestion. Here we imported the use state from React. Just above the fetching data, we set the loading to be true. And after successfully fetching the data from the API, we set the loading to be false. So we add the .finally method here. We open a set of parentheses. We create an arrow function. And we set the loading to be false. Now we create another component called list. So here we right click. We click on new file. We name the file list.js. We use RFC to create the React functional component export. We save the file. We add this component in app.js. Just here below header, we write list, and we click on the third auto suggestion to import list from component/list. We close the tag. Now we need to pass the data, including loading and context states, to list component. So we write here loading equals loading, also context equals context. We save the file. We go to list.js. And here we import the loading and the context. We open a set of curly braces. We write loading and context. First, we console log context to see what's inside the variable. So here we add console log context. We save the file. We check the browser. We use Ctrl+Shift+C to open the web developer tools. If we click on console, we see we have an object that has an array with the name of data. But now the data is empty. I think we made a mistake. We go back to the VS Code. We just need to delete this slash here because we have already added a slash here. So we save the file. We check the browser again. As you can see, our new object has an array with 5 objects. Each object has an ID, last name, first name, and also a picture. If you click on the picture, you see it's a random picture of a man. We want to use these data to create our contact list. So we go back to the VS Code. In list.js, instead of having a div, we create a paper. So we write paper. We click on the first auto suggestion to import paper from material UI/core. We just add some style to the paper. We write style margin 20 pixels up and down and auto left and right. We add a padding 20 pixels in all sides. We limit the width to be 350 pixels. So we write max width 350 pixels. We change the position to be relative and the background color to be pink. We save the file, we check the browser. As you can see, we have a paper here with pink color. We go back to the VS Code. Inside the paper, we write our code. We open a set of curly braces to write JavaScript here. We say if the loading is true, just show the loading. To see the loading progress, we use a component from Material UI called linear progress. So we write linear progress. We click on the first auto suggestion. As you can see, we imported the linear progress from Material UI/core. We close the tag, and if the loading is false, we want to see all the contexts. So we iterate in all the contexts using JavaScript map method. So we open a set of parentheses, and inside these parentheses, we write context.data.map. We open a set of parentheses, we get each contact here, we make an arrow function, we open a set of curly braces, and we return a div. Inside the div, we open an image tag, and the source would be contact.picture. The alternative is contact.firstname. We save the file and check the browser. As you can see, we have all the profile pictures, but we want the pictures to be smaller and round. So we go back to the VS Code. We add a style in image tag. We change the width to be 70 pixels. The border radius 50%. Also, we add a margin here. The margin would be 10 pixels, 20 pixels, 0 and 0. We save the file and check the browser again. As you can see, we have all the profile pictures, smaller and rounded. We add each profile name. So we go back to the VS Code. We add the h4 tag here. Which is contact dot first name and also contact dot last name. We save the file, we check the browser again. Now we added the name, but we want the name to be in the same row of the profile picture. So we go back to the VS Code. We add a style here. We write display flex. We save the file, we check the browser again. As you can see, now the name and the profile picture are at the same row. Also, we want to add the email address. So we go back to the VS Code, just below the h4 tag. We add a paragraph and we write contact.email. We save the file, we check the browser again. As you can see, the name and the email are at the same row, but we want them to be on the top of each other. So we go back to the VS Code. We add a div here and we bring these two inside the div. We save the file, we check the browser again. As you can see, now we have the name and the email in different rows. We just need to decrease the font size of the email. We go back to the VS Code. We add a style here. We write font size equal to 10 pixels. We save the file, we check the browser again. As you can see, now we have a smaller email font size. If you refresh the page, you can see that before loading the contacts, when the loading state is true, a linear progress bar is shown. We can refresh the page again to see the linear progress. Okay, that was it for our project. I hope you enjoyed and learned the basics of React. Please let me know your opinion about the course. Thanks again and see you next time.